Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello everyone, it's the Wednesday, December 31st, 2025 episode of the Marco Dre Show, my final show of 2025, soon to be 2026. Thank you everyone for tuning in to hear all the relevant groundbreaking news here in America and around the world, the only show where the facts are facts and the hard truths thrive. Don't forget, follow the show wherever you might get your podcasts, now available on all streaming apps. It's time for the best hour of radio, uncensored and ready to go. Let's start off the show with some somber news before we get into today's news articles. Victor Davis Hanson is a name you've probably heard from me referencing before. Professor Hanson is a military historian, he's a classicist, he's a commentator, political analyst, author, a senior fellow at the Hoover Institute up at Stanford University up in Northern California. He recently said that he's undergoing a serious medical operation, I'm told, and it's unclear what the surgery is actually for, but he mentioned a long lingering illness for several months, and during a biopsy there was something found. And now he's got to undergo an extensive surgery for this. Now, for those of you that don't know, Victor is a great man, first and foremost, but he's got so much history in the state of California, too. His great-great-grandmother came to the Central Valley in the 1870s, purchased 135 acres for, I think, around $4 an acre at the time, which obviously to us would be like paradise, of course. Buying that much California real estate for $4 an acre? Wonderful, right? But she started her own homestead there, their family farm, and as a true Californian through and through, and a brilliant mind as well, he still lives in that same farmhouse that was built that many years ago. Now, of course, I'm sure it's been renovated since then, but he lives on that same exact property where his great-great-grandmother really started the family history in the state of California, coming from Missouri. And now I believe today he owns roughly around 40 acres of land himself still that his family once owned. You know, I enjoy that his family history is, so central to the Central Valley. So many generations later, he's still a Californian. And he loves the state of California, and he loves this nation too. And it's amazing to see that history remain. So naturally, when I heard this, I was shocked to hear this. But it's very important that we keep positive thoughts for Victor Davis Hanson. Not only is he, again, as I said before, a brilliant mind, a gentleman, a scholar, but he also accounts for a voice of reason in the conservative movement. So if you are religious, I ask that you please say a prayer for Victor today, and that we hope that everything works out with his surgery, that he is cured of whatever this ailment is that he's, dealing with right now, and that he recovers quickly. Now, naturally, our thoughts and prayers are with himself and, of course, his family during this time for him. So please, Victor, get well soon, and we wish the best for you for 2026. So God bless you, Professor. I want to shift our focus now over to a New York Post article, though, on Zohran Mamdani, as one can imagine. And, well, we know he's going to become the new mayor tomorrow. We're all ready for this to happen. We've been anticipating this. Here's how the article reads. It says, Zohran Mamdani will become the first New York City mayor sworn in on the Quran when he takes an oath of office. Yep, no allegiance to the Christian Bible. Okay, well, some of you will say, well, so what, Jure? So what? Doesn't matter. No, it does matter. You see the country shifting. You see the country changing. Changing and moving away from its original values. The values we're all trying to conserve right now. So he's going to be the first mayor to be sworn in on the Quran, right? He will be the first Muslim, the first socialist to lead City Hall. What a stellar group of accomplishments, right? We'll use at least 3 different sets of Islam's holy book to take the oath of office during his private and public ceremonies on Thursday. That's what a spokesmoron said for him. The far-left pole is expected to use his grandfather's Quran and one that belonged to black writer and historian Arturo Schomburg, led by the New York Public Library, during a private midnight ceremony at an abandoned old City Hall subway station. It's really indicative of him, right? Abandoned station. It's going to be what his city's going to look like not too long from now. That's really what it's going to come down to. And again, I'm not shocked to read any of this, to hear any of this. Again, we're moving, the country is moving away in some aspects, particularly the Democratic Party, are moving away from Christianity. And they're ushering in these ideas from people abroad. And again, you can believe whatever you want. I can't tell you what to believe. I can't tell you what to practice. But the idea that we're going to just subjugate our value system and think that our values are going to align perfectly with Mr. Mamdani, who is bringing in socialism, which again is just simply communism, and think that these values can align with each other. We know that the values are not compatible with each other. He is someone who's very much radicalized in this sense. Now, he talks a big game while he says, well, I want justice for everybody. But he doesn't, though. He clearly does not. You cannot be an ardent communist and say, what, my values, my religious values are going to align greatly with yours. They just don't add up. And again, he's a smooth talker. He smiles when he talks. You think he's a friendly guy. For all intents and purposes, he might be a friendly guy. I don't know. What the hell do I know? But you see that he is alienating a certain population in New York City, in the United States right now. So the people of New York City will get what they voted for. They're getting an ardent Islamist, from what I can tell right now. And he's going to usher in his communistic values set to him by the great Bernie Sanders, of course. And likewise, he's got State Attorney General Letitia James will now swear in Mamdani at midnight, while Senator Bernie Sanders will deliver the oath of office to the Democratic Socialist later that day. Isn't that wonderful? We have someone who actively went against President Trump, allegedly lying on real estate business forms, right? She herself was caught for doing the same thing, and of course she evaded that thanks to the ridiculousness of the Republicans and the DOJ, particularly Pam Bondi. And of course we have an ardent socialist from New York City who's now destroyed the state of Vermont, Bernie Sanders, who's going to, again, deliver this oath of office to the fellow Democrat socialists that he helped ignite. I said this a long time ago to you. I said Bernie Sanders has done more harm to this country than most people can even imagine. Like Mamdani, he comes off as a genuine nice guy, right? He's a nice old man, right? Spits when he talks. He makes up little words here and there. Calls Cuba, Cuba, right? I don't know. The disheveled hair, the suit that's never been ironed. All these things. And you think of him as a nice, gentle old man, right? He just wants the best for everybody else, right? Can anyone here point to anything Bernie Sanders has done that made anybody's life better but his own and his wife's? I'm open for ideas. Can anyone point to anything? Of course you can. Can anyone point to any legislation that he's issued that's made anyone's life more prosperous or more fairer or more freer or better? Of course you can, because he hasn't done it. He's just a talker. Like AOC, just a talker. Now again, we can point to the fact that recent mayors have used a variety of different religious texts with personal meaning and historical significance when getting sworn into office, of course. This guy's a little different, though. This guy has talked about his hatred of the country, his disdain for capitalism. It's a completely different thing. He's talked about hating the police in New York City. How's that going to work out when he works with Commissioner Tisch? Is that going to work out well, do you think? I think it's going to be disastrous. Absolutely disastrous. Now, we've had socialists running New York City before. Look at Bloomberg. I'm sorry, not Bloomberg. De Blasio, right? Wilhelm Warren, right? Look at him. He was a communist, right? How'd the city do under him? Good? Great? No, not good at all. Well, we have Mayor Eric Adams on his way out now. He swore in on the family Bible. Okay, good. It aligns with our value system, at least. De Blasio opted to be sworn in on the Bible, which is shocking. You know, obviously a progressive hero. Loved FDR. Yep, there we go. Bloomberg was the first, well, whose first term came in months after the September 11th, 2001 terror attacks, put his hand on the same Jewish Bible that he used at his bar mitzvah. Okay, again, we have people that have different religions that have served the country. All right, he's a Jewish man. But do his values align with the nation of which he lives in? That's the question. And the answer is, for Mamdani, no, it does not. He's a member of the Democratic Socialist of America. How does that align with the country and the values and the founding and our Declaration, of which he spits on every time he talks about it openly? Now, he's since brought it back a little bit. But the idea that he could come in now and be the savior of the city, well, we're going to find out. We're going to find out pretty quickly. Now, he went on to say, of course, the dream of every Muslim is to simply be treated as every other New Yorker. And yet for too long we have been told to ask for less than that and to be satisfied with whatever little we receive. Who the hell said this, by the way? Who told Muslims that they're not like any other New Yorker? Can he point to any example for this? I haven't heard this before. Who said this? Anybody? Could anyone point to this? No. Again, more hysteria propped up by him to make himself look like a victim, of course. Of course. Why not? So it's going to be interesting to see how this works. I'm really going to be interested to see how this city reacts to this. I'm eager to know if there's going to be the mass exodus that I've been predicting for quite some time since he won. And actually, prior to that, I was saying the exact same thing. My first show, some of you might remember back in June 30th of this year, I said he's going to turn New York City into the new Weimar Republic, which, for those of you that don't know, was what Germany was called right after World War I. And it was a complete cesspool, high inflation, super hyperinflation, just disastrous, high unemployment, lots of poverty, lots of degeneracy in the streets. Berlin was I think the sex capital of the world. Anything you wanted, you could find on the streets of Germany. It was just a disgusting, disgusting time in Germany, of course. So I'm eager to see what happens here. I'm sure many of you are too. And again, if you're in New York City, God bless you so much. I do believe it's going to be a trying time. Maybe Mamdani will surprise some of us, though. Maybe he's actually going to come out and do some good things. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think so, but maybe he will. But it's going to be very, very interesting, I think, at the very least. I want to see if some of these utopic ideas that he has are actually going to come to fruition, or if it's going to be a complete crapshoot, which is, again, what I have been predicting for quite some time. Oh, look at this. We got former House Representative Keith Ellison. He's now Minnesota's Attorney General, who's ignored the Somali crimes that we'll talk about momentarily, was the first lawmaker to use the Quran during his swearing in to Congress in 2007. Well, la-dee-da. Does he hold anybody accountable that believes in his religion? Don't think so. I don't think so. Again, there are many Muslims in this country that can coexist with people. They understand they're in a Christian nation. They understand they are free to follow their religion. But when it comes to subverting the culture, they are not doing that. They act like Americans. They go about believing in their faith, which is totally fine. You can be an atheist, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Jew, a Christian in this country, and we can still have the same core values of which this nation was founded upon. Mamdani does not believe that, though. That's the big problem. That's the big takeaway with all this. So again, it's not symbolic that he's being sworn in on a Quran, but it is symbolic that he doesn't like this country, that he wants to subvert everything about this country, that he wants to turn it into a communistic so-called utopia. He's spoken about his hatred of the country before. So let's not be unaware of this. Let's keep this in mind. This is what he's talking about. He doesn't speak highly about Christianity, does he? He doesn't speak highly about any other religion, in my estimation. And if I have any advice for Mr. Mamdani, it would be that you are the mayor for everybody. Not just the people that elected you, foolishly, but nonetheless, the people that elected you. You are the mayor for every single individual. And that goes for anyone else that serves in public office. You are there to represent everybody, not just your own damn self and not your own constituents. So let's see how he treats everyone in the city. Let's see if he goes after just the uber wealthy white people, as he has claimed. And let's see if any of these ideas actually will benefit New Yorkers or if it's going to become Gotham, which I think it's going to be. Anyways, let's move on. Let's move on to Minnesota again. Look at this. This is in Newsweek. It says there's a petition now demanding Tim Walz resign, signed by thousands of people. Change.org petition that has been put out has now more than 46,000 different signatures. I mean, this just shows you he's spiraling out of control. He's actually going to try to run again for governor. Did you know this? After all this mess, after this whole dilemma, this fraud that has ripped off the state, he actually wants to run for governor again. I can't even believe this right now. I'm beside myself. But this is who these Democrats are. They never apologize for what they've done. They never take any accountability for what they've done. If Gavin Newsom could run 8,000 times for governor of California, he would. Without any scruples whatsoever. They destroy everything and they want to be elected again? Now Newsom wants to become president of the United States. What world are we living in that anybody could elect this guy for anything? I'm going to elect this guy to become a street sweeper in San Francisco, of all places. But nonetheless, this widespread welfare fraud in Minnesota, obviously uncovered first by the Biden Department of Justice back in 2022, which describes defendants as the time as people who have exploited the pandemic for personal gain and stolen from American taxpayers. Now, this isn't anything that is indicative just only to Somalis in Minnesota. There are people in California that ripped off the PPP money, too, by the way. That was a huge scandal back in of itself. But now we've seen that there's 90 people now who have been charged with defrauding the state, federal programs, under the guise of nutrition, healthcare, housing, daycare, anything you can name. 57 of which have been given guilty pleas. Convictions in one program alone, that would be the Feeding of Our Future scheme that took place, named after a Minnesota nonprofit that billed the government for hundreds of millions of meals that were never, ever served. How is this possible? This is possible because we have a government that's far too bloated, that is completely out of control, and it's completely rogue. There is no accountability. There is no oversight of these programs. Just like there's no oversight when we do our voting. We have people on voting rolls that have been dead for 30 years that are casting votes somehow. How is this possible? Now it says the estimates of the cost to taxpayers range from $250 million, that's your money, that has been taken from you illegally via taxation of your wages, $250 million anywhere to $1 billion wasted. And most of these defendants are from the East African descent, right? Many are believed to be part of the Minnesota Somali immigrant community, the largest in the United States. And why has nobody in this time, up until right now, held any of these people accountable for this? Where has the money gone? You're telling me all these people spent millions upon millions of dollars and nobody said a word about this? Nobody figured anything out? This falls directly on Walz, of course, and of course his lack of leadership in this position. But now this petition that's being signed right now, people have had enough of this, by the way. People are getting sick of this nonsense. The government has allowed these people to come in foolishly, irresponsibly. Again, this goes back many decades, too, by the way. Don't think it just sprang up all of a sudden. This has been going on for a while. And while many people's heads have been in the sand, the people in Washington, D.C. have allowed this to keep happening. We'll bring in people from Somalia. We'll bring in people from Afghanistan. We'll bring in people from South America. We'll bring in people from the Middle East. We'll bring in people from Asia. And then we're shocked that these people don't give a damn about this country? Look at Mamdani. He was born in Uganda, right? Came here when he was 7. He hates the country. He didn't come here to become an American. He came here to, God only knows what he came here. Make a buck. His parents have done very well. Isn't it interesting, too, all these communists are very wealthy? You see this in the history of all these people that are ardent communists, just like he is. They're all from very wealthy families. Look at Karl Marx. Very wealthy family, yet he's espousing communism. Now, he himself was a fascist, I believe. But again, he's pushing out these radical ideas to, again, uproot and upend society for many people. And whose lives has it made better? Nobody's, except for the people, of course, that are in charge. But the petition says now, and I'll read this to you, it says that it's time for new leadership that can deliver on promises and rebuild the connection between government and its constituents, which again is the whole purpose of government in and of itself. Ensuring transparency, integrity, and progress for all Minnesotans. Are you getting that feeling right now, folks, that Tim Walz is for you? Or for the people that are definitely giving him money and kickbacks from the money that's being ripped off by the state government and also the federal government? But Tim Walz, a typical Democrat, you ask him about this, what's he going to tell you? Take a listen to this.
Look, it's not law-abiding citizens. If that were the case, there's a lot of white men should be holding a lot of white men accountable for the crimes that they have committed. I think for the community to maybe educate their population, because I think what you're seeing here is there's secondary victims in this, that there's providers inside the community that are then victimizing the community themselves by signing them up, because when we're going to some of these people, they're like, I had no idea I was in this program. So I think it's asking us then, for every crime, which of course the majority being committed by white men, asking us to do more about that. I think it's crime in general. And I think the biggest thing on this is just making sure that we're educating the population. And again, this is 80 people or so that have been convicted in this, maybe some more in that, out of a broader ring. Medicaid fraud will stretch across all racial demographics, all ethnic groups. So I think it's really important for us to note each community's got this in their own midst, but to blame them and say that they should have been responsible for stopping it, I think that's a pretty hard reach. I think we continue to educate folks about why they shouldn't commit crimes. You would hope that it's being taught both at home and at schools and in our society. But no, I think this idea that the Somali community's to blame for this because they didn't do more, I think that's how we got into this. And that's, again, I know we're not going to lose the whole plot here. All this work that's being done, Donald Trump brought this to the attention like this is something brand new. This is not brand new, and it's been being worked on. But he made it white hot and very dangerous.
White hot, white men, responsible for crimes. What the hell's he talking about here? Another word salad idiot. Look, hold the people accountable that did this. If it was white people ripping off the system, we'd say go after them. He sat back and did absolutely nothing. Why did he and Keith Ellison do nothing? That's the big question. Well, I'll tell you the answer. Because obviously they were getting money back from these people in this community because they were not going after them. That's what it comes down to. It's a pay-for-play scheme. I hate to tell you that, but that's what it is. And again, he turned a blind eye to the corruption that was happening. This was brought to the DOJ's attention in 2022, and you don't think that Tim Walz knew about it? Come on. I think we're getting a little too naive here. You're telling me that the leading law enforcement officer in the state couldn't figure out that this was happening? This is something that all of a sudden just sprang up? Of course there are other people that rip off the system. Of course there are. But the idea that you are not going to hold these people accountable, then he goes on this rampant, word salad, saying, well, white men should be going after white men, that all this fraud. Oh, okay. We'll point to the massive fraud that's happening in just one specific community of white people then, Tim. What's going on? This goes back to what I have been telling you. There's a lack of oversight. There's a lack of accountability for Governor Walz's office. He is the leading executive in the state. He's known about this. He has chose not to do anything about it. That's the big problem. And he's probably made a lot of money off it too. as many politicians do. So what's going to happen as a result of this? Where do we go from here? Is he actually going to resign? I doubt highly that Tim Walz is going to resign. That would take integrity, scruples, accountability, all things of which do not describe him at all. He's a grifter. He's a liar. He's a loser. He's a bum. And he makes a lot of money off this too. So why the hell would he stop doing this? He'll never hold himself accountable, just like Gavin Newsom would never hold himself accountable for the wildfires we saw just about a year ago almost. Do you think these Democrats are going to hold themselves, and any politician for that matter too, by the way, are going to hold themselves accountable? Yeah, let's keep dreaming. Look at this. Governor Walz's office previously told Newsweek the governor has worked for years to crack down on fraud and asked the state legislature for more authority to take aggressive action. So again, why didn't you do anything about it? Why didn't you work with your attorney general to do something about it? That's the big question. That's the elephant in the room, I guess. Look at this. President Trump wrote on Truth Social in November, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. Tim Walz does nothing, either through fear, incompetence, or both. Yep. Well, Kash Patel's got to look into this too. I think that's got to be something big, of course. You're ripping off the government for billions of dollars, and you only think that 60 people are involved in this? There's going to be a lot more people involved in these big scams that are taking this massive sum of money, leaving it for themselves, and of course giving it back to Al-Qaeda groups back in Somalia. How wonderful. Who pays for that? You and I do. By the way, Kash Patel said on Sunday that the agency has dispatched personnel and resources to Minnesota to dismantle this large-scale fraud schemes that exploit government programs. It can't come soon enough, folks. By the way, if these people are not here legally too, by the way, Kristi Noem needs to get their asses out of this country. And again, I hate to sound like this, but I've had enough of this. I've had enough of the fraud. I've had enough of the abuse of the systems that people use that are supposed to be for, obviously, helping people. And yet we see people getting ripped off time and time again. Where is Doge, by the way? Can we get Elon Musk back in to run Doge and figure out this big scam that's going on? It has been going on. People are getting ripped off left and right, and we think losing billions of dollars is nothing? It's up to $9 billion that is possibly lost in just this whole scam that's been taking place in this one community. So Tim Walz, let me know when it's another community that's just completely ripping off the government for these ridiculous programs, by the way. By the way, we see this in the programs I mentioned. We saw it in the cases of getting more money for having kids, quote unquote, with autism. Right? That's what we're told. All these kids have autism in the Somali community now. And they're getting money and they're getting kickbacks from this system. We are so far away from where we were supposed to be as a people, who are supposed to live freely, live within our means, of course, not to be taxed to death, of course. And what do we see time and time again? These programs are created. People take advantage of these programs, these NGOs. They get government money, a lot of it. And it only enriches the people that are in charge of it. It doesn't do what it's intended to do. And since it's the last day of 2025, let me just leave you with the wonderful quote from Walter Williams, as I always quote to you many times. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So while a program might have good intentions, we might think it has good merit, it leads us straight to hell. That's what it comes down to. Never forget that. Oh, by the way, speaking of fraud, this is in Breitbart news. Oh, yeah. It says, HUD report finds Biden rental assistance paid billions to dead people. Wow. Not a shock there. Again, how do you have this happen? How do you have this happen time and time again? Where dead people are voting, dead people are getting money, nobody knows about it. No one can connect the two together. This is the stupidity of these programs. There's no follow-up on who's getting the money, where the money's going. We just had the Pentagon fail its, 8th audit now? They can't account for a certain amount of money that has been given to them? 8 times in a row, failing the audit. And yet they have one of the biggest budgets, probably in the entire world. What are we giving them? $901 billion? Almost $1 trillion? And year after year, they're failing audits. Unbelievable. We're supposed to make government more effective, I thought. Government efficiency. And yet here we go with our Pentagon. A government program right in D.C. cannot account for the money of which it's used. This has gone on for so long, folks. It's ridiculous. But the people that keep getting screwed are we, the taxpayers. We, the American people. When inflation happens, when your dollar loses purchasing power, you are the ones that get screwed as a result of this. But anyways, the report says that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development found that the Biden administration's rental assistance program paid billions of dollars in taxpayer funds to dead tenants. Now, according to HUD's agency financial report for fiscal year 2025, roughly, you're not going to believe this, 30,000 dead tenants and thousands more potential non-citizens received rental assistance. Someone's cashing in big time on this, let me tell you. With one HUD official telling the New York Post that a large concentration of those funds went to New York, California, and Washington, the District of Criminals. There you go. Deceased recipients allegedly received funds in all 50 states, however. So we have this massive abuse of taxpayer dollars. We have it in Minnesota, among the Somali population. Now we have people ripping off HUD. You can't make this stuff up, folks. When are we going to realize we cannot continue to do this? There has to be oversight on these programs. There has to be. Otherwise, we simply can't have this. This rot runs so deep, it's absurd to me that we never catch these things. But again, there's no oversight, so it makes sense. So the report compared the U.S. Treasury database to HUD's records, which allegedly found 30,054 deceased tenants who were either actively enrolled in the assistance program or had received assistance after they have passed, along with the possibility of problematic payments through its own internal financial review and analytics. Yep. There it is. Your money just going to somebody else, ripping off the system, getting lots of money for it. HUD will continue to investigating the shocking results and will take appropriate action to hold bad actors accountable. Yeah, right. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Look at our DOJ, by the way. Finally, at least they're arresting people. I mean, my God. It says, additionally, the department is advancing efforts made under President Donald Trump's first administration to strengthen program integrity and ensure taxpayer-funded assistance serves the vulnerable communities it was intended for. Yeah, everyone's a victim, aren't they? Everyone needs assistance. We print out dollar after dollar. Look at this. Look at this. Look where we are today. $38.5 trillion in debt. It's exploding. Absolutely exploding. Look at this. HUD distributed $50 billion in federal rental assistance to non-federal entities, with the report describing $5.8 billion of those funds as questionable payments, blaming it on the Biden administration's directive to push funding out the door with minimal oversight. That's what Biden did, of course. Again, with all these programs that he came up with, right? These trillion-dollar spending deals. And again, they use COVID as a guise for all this. Throw money here, throw money there. Everything works out, right? Everything's hushed. It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. People need to go down for this. People that are ripping off the system need to go down for this. And we need Doge back more than ever right now. Where is Elon Musk? Why? Ever since he talked about auditing Fort Knox for gold, you haven't heard a word from him. He went away. Get him back, get his computers back. I don't care who you get back. We need Doge more than ever right now to look into states and, of course, what the federal government is spending money on, particularly the Pentagon, for God's sakes, of all things. But I digress, folks. Do I think anyone is going to go down? Of course not. Why would they? Why would they? Oh, by the way, Times of Israel has now said that Trump's taking very seriously considering the sale of F-35s to Turkey now. So Israel gets F-16s, Turkey gets F-35s. Paid for by you and me. Talk about another travesty. foreign aid. Yep, look at this. U.S. President Donald Trump says he's considering selling top-end F-35 fighter jets to Turkey. He says, we're thinking about it very seriously. Trump says when asked about the F-35 deal for Turkey as he met Netanyahu at the U.S. leader's Florida club, the United States booted Turkey from development of the F-35s, a top-of-the-line stealth plane, in 2019 after the NATO ally went ahead with purchases of missile defense from Russia. However, Trump has warm relations with Turkish President Recep Erdogan, despite the veteran Islamist-rooted leader's fiery denunciations of Israel's conduct in Gaza. That one did not go over well the other day, too, by the way. Those two have been going at it fairly well, back and forth with each other. Netanyahu's coming out and saying that Erdogan wants to reclaim and obviously reinstitute the old Ottoman Empire. Netanyahu says it'll never happen. That's his land, right? Of course. That's his idea. He wants to create his own Greater Israel project. He doesn't want Turkey coming in and stealing up land. Of course not. Why? That's Netanyahu's job. Come on. Now, Israel has expressed concern, of course, in the past over the potential sale of the advanced F-35 fighter jets to Turkey and other nearby countries, as it's anxious to preserve its qualitative military edge in the region. Well, no kidding. Of course it is. Because if nobody else in the region can withstand the technology, the military equipment, the weaponry that Israel has, they don't have to worry about anything. This is why they want to go after Iran right now. This is why they're making such a big deal about the ballistic missiles that they have. Now, they're trying to say that Iran only has 1,000 ballistic missiles. That's ridiculous, first and foremost. They have probably at least 30,000. And they've been upping their game since this attack that took place back in June. Israel knows this. Israel wants to take down and, of course, institute regime change in Iran. That way they have no opposition if they go into Saudi Arabia, if they take Jordan, if they take Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, West Bank, parts of Iraq. They want that land. They want it very much. And, of course, I think they want some land in Egypt as well. They want a whole lot of land. And they don't want any opposition. And if they deball these nations of their weaponry and keep theirs high class, they know that they have little to worry about when this all takes place. Just so we're all clear on all this. So that's Netanyahu's stance on this. Isn't it funny, too? I said this to you yesterday. We haven't heard a word about Iran's ballistic missile system. I knew about it because I listened to people that speak about this. And I knew that they were arming up, and I knew that the possibility of a war with Iran was going to ignite again very, very soon. And what did we hear yesterday? Well, if they want to make a deal, let them make a deal. But if they try to do anything with their ballistic missile systems, anything that will protect their airspace, we're going to go back in and, solve it. You can't make this stuff up. So originally it was their nuclear weapons program, which they don't have, by the way. Now it's all about their ballistic missile system. So they changed the goalposts. And, of course, the idea for the concept of war is hotter than ever, of course. Now they're getting mad about Turkey becoming a formidable foe in the region as well. Not a shock at all. Trump needs to obviously understand that anything he gives to Netanyahu, he's going to use against these people. So if he gives them F-16s and they use them against Turkey, that's not going to look very good. So he's got to keep peace in the region and, of course, try to keep stability if he can, but at the same time, he lets Netanyahu do whatever he wants anyways. The idea that he came out yesterday and said everything that Israel's done has been 100% correct and 100% towards the ceasefire, to me, is just laughable if anyone's been paying attention to it. Netanyahu hasn't honored that day one. But now the press can go out and say, look, well, President Trump said Israel's following through. It's just Hamas that's not doing it. Laughable at best, folks. Laughable at best. Okay. Bloomberg. What do we got here? Bloomberg. It says UN approves sharp cuts in 2026 budget amid financial turmoil. No kidding. How many times have I been telling you these European governments are all in recessions right now? says now that the UN has approved a 7% reduction in its annual budget from last year's, as the organization grapples with financial crisis driven largely by the refusal of the U.S. to pay what it owes. Why are we paying anything into the UN anyways? Look at this bloated budget that they get every single year. What do they do with this money? Last year was $3.72 billion. Now they want to drop it down to $3.45 billion. To do what with? What has the UN done that's successful? Why are we paying anything into this? This is a reduction, which includes cutting some 2,900 positions. Again, who are these people? Positions for what? Right now, we're going into Venezuela, and who's trying to stop President Trump as a result of that? Who at the UN is calling this out? Who at the UN is doing anything about what's happening in Gaza, the West Bank, and in Syria, and in Lebanon, and what's happening between Iran and Israel? Anybody? Not a one. So what's the point of the UN then? There isn't one, really. It's just a globalist organization. Now, it says earlier this month, the organization announced that it would no longer provide paper towels at restrooms in its global headquarters in here. What a joke. What an absolute joke. I mean, Trump should really just pull out of this as well. Say, we're not giving you another dime until you actually do something, but that'll never happen. So we have to understand a couple things here. The world economies are crumbling right now. That's just a fact. We see that with the prices of the precious metals spiking up. Whenever you see that happen, when they start going up, 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 you see these global currencies, the euro, the dollar, the US dollar particularly. All these other currencies are trash now. That's why a lot of these BRICS nations are going after purchasing gold right now, because that is a stable asset for them to have. So now we see that liquidity remains fragile, and this challenge will persist regardless of the final budget approved by the General Assembly, given the unacceptable volume of arrears. This is what the UN Security General Antonio Guterres earlier this month said in his own proposal for the revised budget for the upcoming year. Hey, listen, they want us to pay somewhere around, well, it says here the approved budget is some $200 million higher than the UN leader has proposed. Well, listen, we give billions of dollars into this, right? There's billions of dollars in this one single budget. This isn't even their peace proposal budget that they have for something else. This is just their core operations. But now they're talking about a budget that has cut something like 18% of jobs, slashing some $577 million. That just goes to show you, what's the purpose of this then? If you could just slash almost 3,000 jobs, what is the purpose of these positions? I mean, this is like, again, they need a Doge for the UN, I think. I mean, again, so ridiculous that we pay for this. So the U.S. usually contributes 22% of the UN's regular budget, but Trump has said he will not pay the $826 million for 2025 and still owes $660 million. Yep. Money wasted. Now, U.S. Ambassador Mike Walz, this is probably the only time I probably agreed with him, says that we are doging the United Nations. In an X post on December 17th, while the U.S. bureaucracy was celebrating the plan to cut some 2,600 UN jobs and 25% of peacekeepers. Peacekeepers for what? Where do we see peace breaking out in the world? Not in the Middle East. Not between Ukraine and Russia. Certainly not with Russia and the EU. Certainly not with the United States and Venezuela. Where is the peace? This is my question. Where is the peace in the world right now? Who is promoting peace right now? I talk about peace on this show. I say I want peace. I want diplomacy. Shouldn't the UN serve as that beacon of peace where leaders are regularly coming to speak with each other versus the conflicts that we're continuing to see? Look at all these conflicts we see. Pakistan, India, the Congo versus God knows who else. all these other groups killing Christians inside Africa. Where is the peace, I ask you? Who is holding these other countries accountable? Why is it the United States has to go into all these countries and act as the babysitter of the world time and time again? I don't blame Donald Trump for pulling out of paying this large sum of money, and we get absolutely nothing in return. And then we're always asked to provide more aid. Provide more aid. Provide this weaponry. Come speak to this country. This is not what the United States was supposed to be. The benefactor of the entire world. The babysitter of the entire world. We were supposed to be a small, limited government of represented officials with very low taxation, by the way. That's something that, again, that's foreign to us today. Many people pay over half of what they earn, which again is ridiculous. But we're so over ourselves. We're so over ourselves that we actually would go out and pay hundreds of millions of dollars in a program that provides what to the world? Nothing. The Paris Climate Accord, what did that do for the world? Nothing. It just stifled the U.S. economy. That's all it was. Other countries continue to pollute left and right. We pay all this money for what? I ask you because I'm trying to figure it out myself. What are we paying this money for? What do we get in return for this? What do we get in return for the foreign aid that we provide so many of these countries? We're giving $8.6 billion worth of aircrafts to Israel? Entertaining the idea to give also some of these to Turkey? Yet our cities are decaying. They're crime-ridden. The opportunities are leaving. It's so foreign to us, isn't it, folks? But we think this is normal. And really, it should be the exact opposite. By the way, let me just read to you really quickly what the UN spends its money on, by the way. It says here that the bulk of these billions of dollars right now, it says here, core UN organs, global policy coordination, human rights work, sanction oversight, and special political missions are really what the UN regular budget supports. That's the one we're talking about right now. This doesn't even include peacekeeping or operations, the UN agencies like the World Health Organization, again, these front groups, which are really just globalist groups, by the way, that try to circumvent particular governments and, of course, change legislation, protocols, and what have you. That's why Biden almost signed that. That's this deal with the WHO that says if the WHO comes in and says we need to do something, we'll do it. Can you imagine handing our sovereignty over like this? This all needs to be disbanded, by the way. Look, it's humanitarian aid. This isn't even in that $4.45 billion. It's not even a part of this. This is something else totally different. We need to get out of this. Look at this. The UN spends $5.38 billion per year on peacekeeping operations. Really? You could have fooled me. Trump, in his own right, was trying to speak with 8 different of these groups of people that are at each other's throats. Now, sadly, none of these conflicts have ended. But this is what we're seeing right now. Now we're seeing China successfully announcing they've accomplished what they wanted in their military operations and these drills around the island of Taiwan. Look at how these things are heating up. Where is this peace? If we honestly spent money on peace, not just throwing money at the situation, but honestly worked for peace, we'd have it, folks. Just so we're all clear on that. Never forget that people get really, really rich off of wars and all these conflicts we're continuing to see. The UN is absolutely useless. All right, moving on. USA Today, kind of reiterating what I just said. Trump publicly touts CIA-led strikes that are normally kept quiet. I guess he was a little bit happy about it. Maybe he was just really, really happy about it. Says that President Trump bragged this week about the United States' first reported land strike on Venezuela. Again, we haven't announced war. Venezuela doesn't threaten our national security, but yet he still slipped up and said that a CIA-led operation in what retired intelligence experts branded an unusual move. You know, you're not supposed to say that we're doing this. We're supposed to just do it quietly and let it go, sweep it under the rug. So the United States made covert incursions into Latin America before, but it's rare that a U.S. official, let alone the U.S. president, to acknowledge it publicly, a former CIA and military intelligence officer told USA Today. The CIA, in their covert operations, historically carried out covert operations to avoid the public knowing about them. Well, of course. Of course, we don't know what the CIA is doing in these countries. Right? We're supposed to keep it on the down low. Overthrow this government, overthrow that government, right? Nothing's supposed to be said in the papers, of course. It's supposed to be a stealth organization. Well, Trump said the quiet part out loud, though. In an interview to WABC Radio on December 26th, when he said that the U.S. had knocked out a big facility where the ships come from 2 days prior without mentioning where the strike took place. When he was pressed about it by reporters on December 29th at an event at Mar-a-Lago with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump said that the U.S. had struck a dock area where they load the boats up with drugs. He said, "We hit all the boats, and now we hit the implementation area," is what he said. Now, I'll refer you to the DEA website, folks, that say that Venezuela is not even among any of the top countries that would bring in drugs to the United States, if at best, this is at best, they serve as maybe a transit, but those drugs don't come directly to the United States. This is why I told you, we've never seen a president go after a country specifically for implementing drugs into the United States. Again, why are we going to war with Mexico, or Colombia, or Bolivia, or China, or any of these other hotbeds where these drugs are actually cultivated, they're made, and the factions, these terrorist cells, that make a lot of money off it. They're not making fentanyl or cocaine inside Venezuela. At best, they're using it as a transit hub to ship to perhaps West Africa, going into Europe, Asia, that way. They're not sending it directly to the United States. So while we see this illegal expulsion of fishing boats in the Caribbean, just understand that not only is that illegal, but of course the seizure of oil tankers, stealing the oil, stealing the ships, is also illegal. And by the way, where is the UN on this? Just a thought. Where is the wonderful UN? Where are the peacekeeping organizations in the UN to call this out? Nowhere to be found. So now we have it later being reported that day that the CIA actually carried out the drone strikes on a December dock explosion inside Venezuela that the United States suspected was being used. And again, look at that, suspected, not, unequivocally knowing that it was being used by the gang Tren de Aragua to load drugs onto boats. The Trump administration has designated Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization. Well, I'm sorry, folks. That doesn't mean you can just go in there and start blowing things up in a foreign sovereign nation. Quite the opposite, actually. Yep, but there you go. Trump said the quiet part out loud, so now everybody knows about it. And I told you before, we are going to be going to war with Venezuela in 2026. The naval blockade, preventing trade, is an act of war. Now we're bombing on land. And if we think that sending in 20,000 troops to Venezuela is going to do anything, we're obviously kidding ourselves. Just thought I'd be clear on that. That's a very small number. It's not a number that could really do very much in a nation that has terrain like Venezuela does. And to reach some of these locations, obviously would be very, very difficult, as one can imagine. No, I don't think this regime change is going to work, folks. I don't think that Maduro's taking the bait on this. And I don't think we'll see him step down. But look at the mess we've seen this year with these destruction of these fishing boats. We saw the debacle with the September 2nd attack. Again, the strike on that boat was illegal, as all these are illegal. We've seen over 105 people killed in these attacks, none of which have been charged with any type of crime, names of people we don't even know. But we actually killed 2 survivors of one of these attacks, and it was completely blown off. by Congress, by the Supreme Court. The Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, said he's not going to release the video footage. Why not? If everything was legal, why not release it, Pete? Again, it's more disturbing when you have people clinging to wreckage. You order another strike to kill these people. Went through international law. You're supposed to go and rescue those people. And the concept, too, that these people were calling for help, they're stranded in the ocean. They're stranded in the ocean, so they're not going to have any type of way to harm you, if they even could before. Yeah, we carried another strike to claim their lives. And we don't know what was on these boats. We don't know where they were going. We don't know their names. We don't know if they're affiliated with Trend Arag or anybody else, for that matter. John Kiriakou, who used to work for the CIA before he was arrested for being a whistleblower, claimed the other day that a foot and boot of a Trinidadian fisherman washed up on shore there, and they're very upset about that. This is who we're killing, folks. We're killing fishermen. The idea that everyone we kill is a narco-terrorist that may leave Americans feeling good, it's completely opposite of that, though, leaves you with the idea that, hey, this shouldn't be right. There's no due process here. We're violating international law. But yet nobody says a thing about it, so we continue to do it. And that's the way the world works right now. Absolutely embarrassing at the best. All right, folks. Got a couple minutes left of our final show of 2025. I can't believe it. I have so many more articles to go over with you, too. Let me pick one more to go over before we close out the year. Let's read this one. This one is good. I like this one. This one's a little positive message. This is also on Breitbart. It says here that Nigel Farage said that 2026 will mark the start of the last chance battle to save Britain. Is he right about that? Look how far Britain has fallen. And we're falling right at the same pace as that, by the way, here in the United States. He said in his New Year's Eve message to the nation, this would be the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, cast 2026 as the critical point for the populist movement inside the country of dethroning the political establishment and saving Britain. Look how far they've fallen. Now, I actually have the video of him speaking right now. It's a very good message, too, by the way. It's a message of hope. A message of change. Could we get better? I always told you, there's always a chance to turn things around. In your own life, in our country, in our communities, and what we're doing, there's always the chance to get better. And the more that we let governments come in and take power, take our freedoms, take our God-given rights, we move further and further away from that chance. But right now in Europe, in the United States, there's still, and Canada too, by the way, there's still chance for change, for positivity. Listen to what he said here in this outgoing message, though. It's very, very enlightening, I have to say.
As 2025 draws to a close, I can't remember the country ever being gloomier. People are getting poorer, more people are becoming unemployed, inflation is proving sticky, and our debt is running completely out of control with a chancellor who doesn't seem to have a clue what...
Is he talking about the United States or are you talking about the UK? No, I think he's talking about the UK still. Okay, all right. Well, it sounds very, very much alike what's happening in the United States, isn't it, folks? Again, scary times. I hope I'm wrong, but he's really describing what's happening here in the United States as well. Maybe not to the extreme, but he's explaining exactly what we're seeing right here in the United States in 2025.
What she's doing. Worse than that, people are frightened now to walk down the street wearing a watch, wearing jewelry. Oh, and by the way, if you say anything rude on Facebook, you may well get a knock at the door. Well, I've come here today to Greenwich to have a think about what this country used to be, what it represented, and what it can become. Because, of course, Greenwich was here at the very height of Britain's naval power. And that wasn't just about winning the Battle of Trafalgar. It wasn't just about building the biggest empire the world had ever seen. It was also about a Royal Navy that spent decades at huge cost driving slavery off the high seas. We have an enormous amount of our past to be proud of, and yet our education system, under both of the last governments now teaches our kids to be ashamed of the past. Well, the first thing a reform government will do is make sure kids are taught correctly about our history. But if
He's wonderful, by the way. He really is. He led this whole Brexit movement, and he was a leader in this, of course. And everything he's saying right there is absolutely true. In this Breitbart article, he goes on to say he's talking about an individual whom has been this kind of revolutionary element in Egypt. And he said, here's a guy that came out of Egypt, came back to Britain, who's put out the most abominable, hateful tweets about killing Jews, white people, fighting police, and this man was given citizenship by the Conservative Party in the UK. And then he was actually welcomed back into Britain by the Labour Party. Now, here we go. We have the conflict of these two parties that seem to be like uniparties, except now it's in Britain. Don't we see this happening in the United States, folks? We saw this with Abrego Garcia, remember? We saw this. He's supposed to be let go, and yet somehow he's brought back in the country. Now he's living in America yet again. Here's a guy with gang ties. He's an illegal alien. And yet we have judges acting on his behalf to keep him in the United States. And when you have politicians, when you have officials in government who don't care about the country, who don't care about the rule of law, you will cease to have your country as you know it. He finished up very strongly, though, in this, and I believe it's important to listen to this. But he lamented on the fact, of course, that the left-wing Labour Party that's in government right now has been enabling local courts to delay elections, things of that nature. Again, he's pointing out the corruption that he's seeing in government. But he ended with this positive message. And I want you to hear it right now. Because, again, this gives you hope that something positive can happen in 2026. And I think a lot of people in the UK are fed up. And I know people in the United States are fed up with what we're seeing right now in this government. And we should always demand more of our government. And people in France, in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, all over Europe need to get on board with this as well. It's the end of the illegal invader hordes that keep coming into these nations and destroying the fabric of societies, tearing down the system. Are we going to keep seeing this in the United States, in Canada, in Europe as well? Or is it the year that we're going to take our nations back? To be proud of who we are as a people and what we've accomplished in this world? Or are we going to allow the powers that be continue to rule over us? Take a listen.
we may well be the last chance this country has to actually restore some proper values, those of family, community, country, the ones upon which I based this party when I founded it in the very beginning. But we cannot do this without you, and you will not get the change you want without us. So let me ask you one thing. Please make it your New Year's resolution to do something. Support reform, join reform, go out and spread the message that we are the party of hope, we are the party of change, and we are, genuinely, the last chance for Britain.
What a good message. I mean, honestly, what a great message that was. Uplifting. He's a guy that maybe can make some change for Britain to, again, restore it. And again, we were once a nation that was closely aligned with Britain. Obviously not so much anymore. But we have those similar values, the similar ideas of freedom that should exist in both nations, again, and all over Europe too, as well. So on a final note, folks, I say to you, closing out 2025, I can't believe we're at the end of the year, and I can't believe this is the last show. But again, thank you for tuning in today's show. Have a great evening, ushering in 2026. I want to thank those of you that have been here listening, obviously this year. You're the real OGs. Let's make 2026 a great year, obviously for positive change, as we as individuals, upward growth for America, and of course the prosperity of our nation as a whole. Let's hold our politicians accountable this year, folks. Have a great rest of your day, folks. If you're going out today, be safe, and I will see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dure Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.